The good news is that your perfect date has happily turned into the perfect mate. The bad news is there's a bit of a problem. You think they're a wonderful person, but unfortunately nobody else does. Take the story of Rita, pleasantly middle-class Rita. Beauty, they say, is in the eye of the beholder, and I speak as one who finds splendour in all sorts of people and other representatives of God's creatures, with the exception of earwigs. Sorry, but that's the way it is for me with these particular insects. I hate them because they scare me. So it was fortunate that Rita didn't fall madly in love with an earwig. Unfortunately, it was something far worse. Colin was a park gardener. Nothing unusual in that, you might say, except that Colin had the misfortune to look rather like Charles Manson. If you don't know who he is, Manson was the leader of a group of young followers known collectively as the Family. Over 2 nights in August 1969, his followers killed 7 people in California, including Roman Polanski's wife Sharon Tate, who was 8 months pregnant at the time. Beautiful he is not. I don't know if you've ever seen a picture of Charlie Boy, but let me tell you, he looks exactly like the sort of person you might suspect to be the leader of a murderous satanic gang. But what about Colin? Complete with satanic-looking tattoos adorning most parts of his body, along with wild, unkempt, unwashed hair, a scraggy beard and deeply penetrating eyes, you didn't have to know anything about Charles Manson to feel slightly uneasy in Colin's presence. He was not the most self-conscious person in terms of bodily hygiene either, rarely washing his hands, for example, if ever. Aside from looking permanently grubby all over, he also had rather unpleasant habits, such as not using the toilet if he needed to evacuate his bowels while working in the garden of Rita's home, and presumably this was equally true for when he was working in the park. So you can begin to see why other people felt uncomfortable about him for reasons other than his peculiar looks. So how had this renegade and reprobate won the heart and mind of Rita, I hear you ask? Well, she first met him at the local park while sitting by the lake and watching the ducks. Colin approached her and said she was the most gorgeous thing he'd ever seen on 2 legs. Unprompted, he gave her his mobile phone number and asked her to call sometime. Wisely, some might say, she didn't call, telling friends that while it was very flattering at her age to have been told by a strange man that she was gorgeous, the problem with the compliment is that it had come from a very strange man indeed, one who looked positively dangerous. While one might generously say a weed is a plant whose virtues have yet to be discovered, this sentiment wasn't ever going to apply to this guy. Besides, why would she want to be involved with a lowly park keeper? Quite so, her friends murmured sympathetically. Months later, she bumped into Colin in the park once more. This time, he wasn't going to take no for an answer. He must have followed her home because every day for the next 2 weeks, he proceeded to buy and deliver her flowers. It was a tactic that left Rita totally hooked on this peculiar-looking man. Now listen, I know a lot of women are irresistibly drawn to a bit of rough, but how can anyone put up with a bloke who doesn't see the need for a tissue when you have a runny nose because the back of a hand will do instead? To me, it defies belief. However, this was how it was going to be with Colin, and the relationship lasted on and off for about 2 years. At the time of writing, Rita hasn't seen Colin for a while, and it looks as if it's finally over between them. But when she was seeing Colin, everyone, bar none, from friends and family, including her grown-up children, kept completely out of her way, because, in 2 words, they found her chosen partner utterly repugnant. It's only now that these important people are beginning to come back into her life. So much for Rita's walk on the wild side with the sort of person most people, hopefully, will never encounter during the daytime, let alone on a dark night.